Welcome back. You're watching News Center. The RBI has released an important report on state finances and also on the working of the central government. The report points out that the liabilities of state governments is declining, but it still remains above pre-pandemic levels. The RBI has also cautioned state governments against loan waivers and schemes to provide free electricity, free transport and allowances to unemployed youth and women. The central bank argues that such spending could crowd out resources available to build critical infrastructure. It also warned about the weak health of state-owned power distribution companies. The RBI also had a word of caution for the union government. The central bank said that too many centrally sponsored schemes reduce the flexibility of state governments to spend, and it dilutes the spirit of cooperative fiscal federalism. Joining us right now is the former Finance Secretary, Mr. Garg. Mr. Garg, thank you very much for being with us on the program. Do you see some need for immediate alarm on the way the state governments are managing their finances? We're coming out of elections in different states, and we have seen subsidies, state-level schemes playing a very important role in these election outcomes as well.
So, Parikshit, if you go by the report, I think there cannot be a more sounder endorsement of the way the states have been managing their finances. For 23-24, the provisional accounts of the states tell you that the state's aggregate fiscal deficit was 2.9% of GSDP. They were allowed to do 3.5%, but they could manage 2.9%. Except in 2021, when the GDP had actually gone down and the fiscal deficit ratio of the states had gone up to more than 4%. In every year, the states have managed to hold on to less than 3% or so of the fiscal deficit. There's a lot of concern these days about the states spending so much on freebies and FDs and those things like that. But the other finding which the Reserve Bank has brought out in the report is that their revenue deficit was only 0.2% of the GDP, which is almost as if the states have been running their finances without running any revenue deficit. And all of that, 3% or so, of the fiscal deficit is being used for capital creation. There cannot be a more sound management of state finances. Now, to respond to your question about immediate, we have seen in last 1 year and 2 years, a lot of states going for cash transfer schemes, Ladli Behna, or whatever version of those are there in various states. The key point I think you should remember this is that the states are managing to incur all these expenditures without affecting the quality of their finances, which is there. So I'm not unduly concerned about states' management of finance.
Okay, the other point that strikes us is that the RBI noted in its report that too many central government schemes reduce the flexibility of state government spending and dilute the spirit of cooperative fiscal federalism. How do you see this, and what course correction can be done?
See, the impact of too many centrally sponsored schemes is not adversely reflected in the state's management of finances. Of course, it constrains the state's flexibility. The states have to not only find resources for matching the contributions for the centrally sponsored schemes, they also have to provide for the gap between what is the total and true cost of the centrally sponsored schemes and what the central government provides by way of unitary or unit cost-based kind of reimbursement to them. Increasingly, central government is putting more and more of the share of the centrally sponsored schemes. It ranges now up to 40% for many schemes, and that would be very well, the center would be very well advised to sort of give more flexibility in the centrally sponsored schemes. In fact, it should reduce the centrally sponsored schemes and should not actually undertake the kind of loan assistance which the central government has started for the last couple of years for in the name of capital expenditure. The state governments are not using that for incurring capital expenditure because their fiscal deficit is within their original limit, not the enhanced limit of the centrally sponsored or central government provided loans. So I think the center would, but this is a subject which has been going on for the last 40 years. Various committees have gone. The central government has not been able to resist the temptation of undertaking yet another centrally sponsored schemes any time. So therefore, I don't think this will be possible. But the advice, if it is taken, it should be a very well acceptable advice.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Garg, for joining us with your perspective on the RBI's latest report. Now, let's focus on another important point. In that RBI